BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Jane Lewis and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, bringing you all the news, insight and analysis you need as we head into another busy few days. It's Friday the 26th of January, Australia Day no less, which will become relevant in a moment. Here's what's coming up today.
I kept wondering where he was, because it doesn't matter how I chased or how I pressed, he always seemed to be in 5 yards of space. He was an incredible talented player.
We'll have reaction as the UK men's international record cap holder Steve Davis retires from the game. We'll also look ahead to a massive weekend of fixtures, including a make or break clash at Tynecastle.
Oda with a strike, Oda with a goal! Miofsky scores! Of course he does!
And we'll get the lowdown on the SWPL final and hear how the Scottish-based contingent are doing at the Asian Cup.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
Ryan McGowan, the St Johnstone defender, joins us. So too does Brian Graham, the Partick Thistle striker and also the manager of the Partick Thistle women's team. Ryan, happy Australia Day. How are you feeling?
Oh, very well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction and happy Australia Day to everybody.
Well, Brian, happy Partick Thistle Day. That doesn't quite have the same ring to it, does it?
Doesn't quite work, does it?
Good to have you both on the podcast with us. Lots to get through with Ryan and Brian. But first of all, let's quickly run through the latest Scottish football headlines. League One's bottom side Edinburgh City have been docked 6 points after failing to pay players' wages on time. Brendan Rodgers says Matt O'Reilly is going nowhere. That's after the club rejected a reported £20 million bid from Atletico Madrid for the Danish midfielder. Ross County have made a double loan signing. Huddersfield Loic Aina and Teddy Jenks from Forest Green Rovers join up. Ryan Gould hasn't given up hope of a Scotland call-up after agreeing a lucrative new deal with MLS side Vancouver Whitecaps. And after 13 months after his last game, Northern Ireland and Rangers midfielder Steve Davis has announced his retirement from the game.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Well, you both have played against Steve Davis. What's your reaction, Brian, to him hanging up his boots?
To be honest, I remember playing against him. Obviously, when you're a striker and you're playing against Rangers kind of dominate the ball. But so as that striker, when he's playing in that little 6 pivot role to try and dictate the game, there was sometimes I kept wondering where he was, because it doesn't matter how I chased or how I pressed, he always seemed to be in 5 yards of space. He was an incredible talented player. Listen, he had a fantastic career, but it's still sad when you see a player of that calibre hang up the boots. Yeah,
I think just injury, that last injury just got the better of him, didn't it? He was out for a long time trying to recover from that cruciate ligament. Brian mentioned there, Ryan, the amount that he achieved in his career: 140 caps for the men's Northern Ireland side, 13 goals for his country. For Rangers, he won the league title 4 times, 3 Scottish Cups, 3 League Cups as well. He also played for Southampton, Aston Villa and Fulham too. He's just achieved so much, and as Brian alluded to, a real class act of a player.
Yeah, I think when you just read those things that you've just mentioned there, you don't get any of them if you're a bang average player. And I thought it was a really nice touch by Rangers, what they put up yesterday to, such a good servant for that club. And yeah, it's a sad thing to see when, top quality players sort of succumb to injury, but I'm pretty sure that once he has time to reflect, he'll be unbelievably proud of what he's achieved, and that's all credit to him.
Right, on to the weekend's action now, and arguably the game of the weekend is at Tynecastle, where Hearts take on Aberdeen. How do you see that one going, Brian?
To be honest, Stephen Naismith, is probably turned it around at Hearts. Obviously, I thought a while back, I can remember the Hearts fans, they're the sort of club that they get on the manager's back very, very quickly. And sometimes they don't realise what they've actually got, and the job that he's doing right now is incredible. He's been on a good run. Obviously, Barry Robson up in Aberdeen, it's not going to work this year. It's easy to say it's not going to work, but you've got to factor in all the European games as well. When a club is new to it, when they've not been there for a little while, it takes a bit adapting for the players to get used to playing that Thursday, Sunday role. And now I think you probably look forward to the second half of the season. Obviously, the 1-1 draw with St Johnstone didn't go down too well, but they didn't get beat. It's away from home, so they'll probably take the point on the road.
Ryan's got a big grin in his face when you mentioned that fixture there. Well, of course, you did play against Aberdeen on Wednesday night, Ryan. What sort of opponents are they?
Yeah, like Brian said, I think Hearts did that when they first went into Europe. They struggled a little bit to adapt to the Thursday, Sunday. And even as a club, little things like where you train before you fly away to Europe, how you do your recovery. That's kind of a learning process for clubs that have just come into Europe. So I think Aberdeen's not performed particularly well in the league, but they would have learnt a lot, from that sort of European adventure as such. And that should hold them in good stead if they can make Europe next year. But yeah, they've got a sort of uphill task to try and catch Hearts, but they have a good opportunity at the weekend to get 3 points on them and try and push on. But they've got a lot of good quality players. On Wednesday night they've got some really, really nice footballers, and I think that once they start getting a few results, and they should probably shoot up the league. And this league this year is quite funny in terms of everyone probably goes into games thinking they can beat each other. There's no one that's kind of running away, although Hearts have starting to open up a gap. I think the rest of the league is pretty even, so it'll be up to Aberdeen to make sure that they put the impetus on them to kick on and get a lot more wins and shoot up the league.
Well, their manager, Barry Robson, says that Aberdeen can still catch Hearts in third place, Brian. At the minute, there's a 16-point gap. If they're going to do that, then they're obviously going to have to take points off Hearts, aren't they?
If the manager's coming out and saying that, they need to go to time capture and they need to win. Because if they don't, there's no chance they're going to catch them. But listen, that's a manager that sounds confident of doing it, and I don't mind that, because he's sending the right message out to his players that they're going there to try and win, and then go and try and catch Hearts in third place. So he must believe in himself first and foremost, and he's sending the right message to his players that they need to go to time capture and get 3 points.
It's a big game for your St Johnstone side as well, Ryan, at home to Motherwell, both on 20 points. Are you expecting a tight affair in that one?
Yeah, I think both times we've played them this season have both been draws. It was 2-2. I think it was maybe the Gaffers' first couple of games in, and then we drew 1-1 away. They scored late on at Fir Park. So yeah, they've made a couple of signings in recent weeks, and so have we. So it's one that we're looking forward to. But with us being at home, it's on us to go out and try and win that game. And like I touched on earlier, the league's so close that if you win a couple of games in a week, or like what we do, maybe get 4 points this week, then it can shoot you up the ladder, and you can start looking up the way instead of sort of down the way.
Another big one involving teams at the bottom end of the table. Livingston at home to Dundee. Livingston 6 points adrift at the foot of the table, Brian. They need to start picking up the league points. Of course, they had that big cup win at the weekend. They'll be hoping that that's the spur and the knock-on they need to try and move up the league.
I think David Martindale's been honest in his assessment throughout the course of the full season, talking about budgets and stuff like that. He probably tried and wiggle a few out to get a few in with the last remaining week of the transfer window. But at the same time, I think you've got to look at Dundee as a newly promoted side, and what a job Tony Dock's done is his first manager appointment, because obviously he was Derek's assistant for a number of years, but he was very unlucky at Tynecastle going 2-0 up to lose 3-2. But I'd imagine the Dundee manager, the Dundee players, where they're sitting right now for the newly promoted side, they'd be happy where they are in the league at the moment.
Yeah, happy where they are, Ryan, but they need to be careful that they're on 22 points, that they don't want to get sucked into this relegation battle, do they?
Well, we want them to get sucked into the relegation battle. We want to keep as many
Yeah, you were
teams.
probably the wrong person to ask, actually, on that one.
We want as many teams sort of in and around it. But yeah, like Brian said, they've done really well. Sort of coming up to the league can be difficult, but they've recruited really well, which is key in this league, is to get players in, and players that know the league, and they've picked up results. So they've got some points on the board, and they'll be looking, like I said, they'll probably be looking more up the way than down the way. But it's up to us and the sort of teams are in and around us to try and bring them back in. And I think we play them in a couple of weeks, so that's a game that we're looking forward to up here in terms of playing teams. Motherwell at the weekend, who are on even points, Dundee in a couple of weeks, who will be within touching distance, and try and pick up a few more places up the league and finish the season well.
And it's a potentially tricky game for Rangers away to St Mirren, although I think we said it was a potentially tricky game for Rangers away for Hibs midweek, but they managed to come through that fairly comfortably. Brian, what would you assess, how would your assessment be of this one?
To be honest, like going back on the Hibs game, I only seen the second half because I had training with the women, so I was at home, but I was really disappointed in the Hibs side that night. I didn't think they even laid it off on Rangers second half, which I've seen. I was saying I didn't see the first half, but I thought it was a poor Hibs side, if I'm being really honest. They didn't look like going forward. There was too many passes into the midfield, get back the way. Hibs are at their own side, had to go and put Rangers under pressure, and I just don't think they did that. But on the other hand, you've got to say credit to Rangers because I think their press was great. They looked really confident in the ball. The new managers came in, they looked as if the players are full of confidence in the moment. They look a real outfit, and going to St Mirren at the weekend, Rangers will be fancying their chances. Obviously, we'll still get that game in hand to try and close the gap on Celtic, but right now Rangers are on a crusty wave, and the confidence you can see brimming out the players, and it doesn't matter who starts the game. Every player looks the same, and the managers and they'll be a real mindset that it's a real drive to win, and the players look to have their buying into it.
Celtic at home to Ross County, and Matt O'Reilly still there for the moment. So obviously the manager coming out yesterday and saying that they've rejected this bid from Atletico Madrid. How key is it, Ryan, that they hold on to Matt O'Reilly for as long as they can, really?
I think if you're a Celtic fan, that's your main priority, but I think the rest of the league would love to see him go. He's been unbelievable this season. I would say he's been the best player in the league, and he is a real quality act. So I think if he doesn't go in January like they say, then I think they'll be fending off a lot of offers for him in the summer. But I think it would be a real sort of statement from Celtic if they can keep him until the end of the season, because I think if they lose him, like we've touched on, Rangers seem to have been doing really well since the new managers come in, and if they lose O'Reilly, Rangers pick up a couple of points, then it's a real title chase on the last 6 months of the season. So I think from the board's point of view, they've said all the right things, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether he does stay in January, and if he does, then that's a massive positive for Celtic.
And Brian, it would be remiss of us not to mention that the Championship, always a brilliant tournament, isn't it? The Championship, so tight this season, no different to any other season, I would imagine. For you, potentially crucial game, Partick Thistle away to Adrionians. Ryan, I'll be hoping that you do one over on Adrionians after what they did to them in the Cup.
No, listen, again, I'll go back to what I reiterated with Tony Dock with Dundee. The new side coming into the league early this year. Rhys McCabe's got them playing a style of football that's very attractive, but at the same time, there's a little gap between us and Airdrie at the moment, and we want to go and make that gap higher. So obviously we're looking up the table, trying to catch the two above us at the moment. They're set the tone for the league at the moment, so but we've got confidence in-house that we can potentially go and catch them. And as I said, there's a week and a bit to go in the transfer window, so maybe the manager brings in a couple of players to strengthen us in the running, which does no team no harm. So always when that fresh blood comes into the changing room, it always adds that extra competitive edge, so you just never know what's around the corner.
The Asian Cup is currently being played in Qatar, and Ryan's Australia are through to the last 16, where they'll play Indonesia on Sunday. Are you confident that the Socceroos can get all the way in this tournament?
I fancy our chances against Indonesia, but then I think we'll play the winner of South Korea or Saudi Arabia, which is two of the sort of heavyweights in Asia. So I think we'll get the win on Sunday, but then it's probably the next one that's the big one. And you've seen with the results throughout the Asian Cup that a lot of the sort of smaller teams are definitely getting better, and they've invested a lot of money over the years in terms of the youth, and that's sort of now starting to come through with the players that they're producing. So we'll need to be on our guard come Sunday, but hopefully we can get past them, and then it's a big one against one of the Saudi Arabia or South Korea. So it's a tricky side of the draw, but one that we're fully confident of hopefully progressing through and making the final.
2 wins and a draw so far for Australia. They top their group, and as you say, it's Indonesia for them next up. Lots of Scottish-based players, of course, in the Australia squad. You'll be keeping a keen eye on how they've been doing. I had a quick look earlier today, and a lot of them are getting a lot of game time, actually.
Yeah, I think for Australians over the years, ever since I've probably been here with the league's always had a couple of Aussies playing in Scotland, and it's a great sort of pathway for Australian young players to come over here. The language barrier isn't as difficult as some other European countries, although a few boys struggle with the accent. But cultural wise, and it's a lot easier for them to sort of fit in than maybe going to a Holland or a Belgium or somewhere else in Europe. So it's good that those players are playing. While they're away with the national team, it reflects positively on the league as well. In terms of if they want to go into the Australian market, it's a good advertisement for Scottish clubs to say if you're playing here, it's a good way to get into the national team. So all in all, it's pretty positive, and hopefully the boys that do have those Scottish connections can do well for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, also Scottish connections with the South Korea and Japan team as well. Of course, Celtic's Maeda and Hatate are in the Japan squad, and Owen Yang are with South Korea. Both finished actually second in their respective groups, but both progressed through. Just finally on this one, over the next coming days, who are we to watch out for, Ryan? Who are the kind of big games that you'll be glued to?
Obviously, the Australia one is a big one. From a neutral's point of view, the Saudi Arabia and South Korea game, that would be a really good game. You know, those two are probably, you could argue, along with Japan, the two sort of favourites going into the tournament, and they've not particularly done that well in the group stage. But, you know, as you know, in tournament formats, it's kind of, you want to be hitting the straps towards the end of the tournament. So I would probably fancy the winner of that game to make the final. I'm not sure Graham Arnold would like me saying that, but I think whoever wins that one should probably go in from that side of the draw and make the final. And Japan's another one. You know, there's such a strong squad. You know, if you're looking at it from a Scottish perspective, Kyogo can't even get into the squad, and if he does get in the squad, he's not a starter. So, you know, that kind of shows you the players that they have within their squad, and there'll be ones that, yeah, it would be a massive shock if they don't kind of make the final. So, yeah, I'm sure a lot of Celtic fans will be unsure of whether they want Japan to go out early so they can get those players back. But, yeah, I kind of fancy Japan and or South Korea, Saudi to make the final.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
Well, before we wrap things up, Brian, you've been in the news quite a lot this week after your Partick Thistle women's team reached the SWPL Cup final, the club's first cup final in 53 years. First of all, congratulations on that. It's a big deal for the club, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks very much, first and foremost. But it is a big deal, as you just said. It's incredible achievement from the girls, and as well allude to the 1971 team that went and won the League Cup. They were the underdogs that day. I know for a fact that my girls will be the underdogs against Rangers, who have not been beaten this season, so maybe they can be the girls of 2024. It can go and make history. It's a special group that players that I've got. They're really honest, hard-working group, so I'm lucky that I get a good changing room, and it'd be just a fantastic achievement if my girls can go and win the game.
Obviously, there was a bit of controversy over the date, which was spoken about, but that's now been moved, so there's no clash with the men's team and the women's final. You'll be relieved that common sense has prevailed. You can play for the men, and you can, quite rightly, lead out your women's side as well for the cup final.
The big thing for me is my girls deserve a big crowd, and if people was having to choose between the men and women, then we're trying to promote the women's game. So I'm really pleased that the SWPL and Sky Sports have came to the agreement that they'll move it to the Sunday, because it makes it for a better spectacle. So now that everyone's got real clarity on it, that we can move forward, and we've got another massive game come Sunday away to Montrose. Well, we know if we go there and win, we could potentially secure the top 6 this Sunday as well. So the aims at the start of the season was top 6, and then we could look up the table. Last year, it just shows you the progression of the group. It was the last game before the split that we managed to get a 1-0 win away to Dundee United to finish 1 point. I think it was above Motherwell to secure the top 6. This year, we're in cruise control, if I'm being honest. My group of girls have been phenomenal, and they've not really been getting the plaudits they deserve in my eyes. A lot of people probably just look down their nose at them, or Partick Thistle win a game. They don't really get the awards and the plaudits that they deserve, because I'm working with these girls 3 nights a week, and obviously I'm with them on a Sunday, and I can see the amount of hard work that's going on in the background, and they deserve everything that's coming their way at the moment. So, as I said, very, very special group of players.
Well, time to wrap things up on the Scottish Football Podcast. My thanks to Ryan McGowan and Brian Graham there. And thank you for listening. Remember, our email address is scottishfootball@bbc.co.uk. If you've got any comments or questions for us, then fire them in. And if you haven't already done so, then please subscribe and follow the Scottish Football Podcast so you do not miss an episode. Busy weekend of football coming up as ever, and you won't miss a thing across BBC Scotland, whether radio, television or on the website. From us all though, bye-bye.
The winter transfer window is braving the British weather and is wide open once again.
More drama, more twists, more turns.
I am Kay Curd, and every weekday throughout January I'll be joined by Luke Edwards and some of the country's best football journalists to dissect the day's transfer rumours.
From BBC Radio 5 Live, the Transfer Gossip Daily Podcast.
Who will your team buy, sell, loan, or even just be heavily linked with, only to lose out to your rivals?
What will happen next?
Keep up to date with all the comings and goings straight from the rumour mill with the Transfer Gossip Daily Podcast. Listen on BBC Sounds.